Good morning and welcome everyone to the Sunday Service Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of San Miguel de Allende. Bienvenidos todos al servicio dominical de los Unitarios Universalistas de San Miguel de Allende. Today, as you can notice, we have only one screen due to the humidity. Hopefully, it will be fixed next week. We're located on the lands of the Chichimeca, Otomi, and Nahua peoples and are making community by Zoom across Mexico, Canada, and the US. Nos encontramos en los pueblos de tierra Chichimeca, Otomí y Nahua. Hacemos comunidad a través de Zoom en todo México, Estados Unidos y Canadá. This is a place where we can bring our whole selves and be accepted as we are, with love and friendship. My name is Diana Maya, your fellowship administrator, but today it is both an honor and joy to serve you as a service leader. Our services reflect how we as Unitarian Universalists draw our inspiration and beliefs from many sources of wisdom across the world's religions, from science and philosophy, and from our everyday lives. It is my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, my dear friend Rebecca Robb, a PhD student in Carleton University Ethics and Public Affairs program. Rebecca's work and passion focus on human rights, especially disability rights. She has built a remarkable career as a lifelong learning lecturer, weaving together philosophy and literature in both online and in-person classes. I hope you can find inspiration in her message. Sadly, Rebecca just let us know she's still sick to come this morning. Thankfully, we will be able to listen to her recorded presentation. Before we move into our worship time, we would like to share a few announcements. Tomorrow, August 25 at 5 p.m., we will gather for a Circle Cena at La Frontera. The buffet will include tamales, vegetarian pozole, guacamole, green salad, and mango empanadas for dessert, all for 250 pesos per person plus tip. Everybody is invited, members, friends, and neighbors. Please take this last opportunity to sign up if you haven't done already. To reserve your spot, please look for me at the information table after the service. For those on Zoom, if you are visiting, please type your name and how you heard of us in the chat box, so we can greet you personally later. After the service, those on Zoom are invited to stay connected and visit with others in the main room for discussion. We invite those of you who are here with us in La Aldea to join us for coffee and cookies after the service. Feel free to take your coffee and check out the information table next to the refreshments, where you will find a lot of information and opportunities. If we have visitors with us today, would you please rise so we can recognize you and greet you after the service? Yeah, we have one. Yay! You're welcome to come to our Thursday Lunch and Games event here in SMA and to Tom's Coffee Hour on Zoom. Check your order of service for the details and do not hesitate to bring your friends. Thank you for joining us today. Muchas gracias por acompañarnos el día de hoy.
Good morning. Here are our opening words while Diana lights our chalice. May we be reminded here of our highest aspirations and inspired to bring our gifts of love and service to the altar of humanity. May we know once again that we are not isolated beings, but connected in mystery and miracle to the universe, to this community, and to each other.
Let's join our voices together in song and come sing a song with me. Please remain seated so that everybody can see the screen for the lyrics. After the song, please rise for our covenant. And now, I invite you to join together in reciting this fellowship's unique covenant. This is a promise. Oh, could you please stand? Sorry for the covenant.
Confuse them today.
Yes, I'm sorry. It's my first time, so bear with me. This is a promise that we aspire to of how to be in relation to each other and the larger world. Susan will lead us in English, and I will lead us in Spanish very slowly. Respetamos todos los estilos de vida dentro de su red interdependiente y trabajamos por un mundo justo y pacífico. Alentamos la búsqueda de la verdad y la comprensión total. Nos esforzamos por mantener compasión en nuestras relaciones y buscamos valores que beneficien nuestras vidas y las vidas de los demás. Este es nuestro convenio.
And I'll even go a little slow for those of you who are newish to English. We respect the interdependent web of life and work for a just and peaceful world. We encourage the search for truth and meaning, strive for compassion in our relationships, and seek values that will benefit our lives and the lives of others. This is our covenant. Thank you. You can be seated. Okay. We now enter into a sacred, special time in our service, a time when members and our community share with our community significant joys, sorrows, and concerns that we and they are experiencing. If you have a joy or a concern or a sorrow that you would like to share in a future service, you can contact Reverend Rosiello. You can, if you're on Zoom today, you can put it into the Zoom chat. And if you often come in person, on your way in, there are joy and concern cards that you can give to an usher after you fill them out, and we'll hopefully catch everything and announce it. We share these joys and concerns. I'm sorry, I'm looking at 3 different things at once. We have a concern for a longtime member and great friend of this fellowship, Joan Wolfe, who's been facing additional concerning health news. She's back in Michigan right now with her family, but hopes to return to San Miguel soon. We have a concern, which is becoming a bit of a joy, I think, for Bill Dulcimer, also really a long member and lifelong UU, who was recently hospitalized in New York City, where he and Janet have been. He's now in rehab there and reports he's doing much better. Been asked to share a joy by one of our members, Sofia Gonzalez, is congratulated for her interpretation of Leone Vicario with the theater group here in San Miguel, El Tequio. Yay! Another joy is from Paola Turandot. This week, she says her mother, Claudia, is turning 50. She's so proud of her mom. Yay, happy birthday. We have a concern for Liz Stone, who's often played piano for us over the years. She experienced another fainting episode recently and was taken to MAC. She's had a stent procedure, she's recovering, and hopes to go home today. So we will hope that that all works as planned, and I'm sure Hillary will be going to see her as soon as she can. She reports apparently that she's very tired, but she's keeping up with all the news in the US, which may not be great for healing, but so it goes. We were given a concern by Lauren. Couldn't I grab her name for a second there? Lauren Osernio, who we often hear leading our songs. She's learned, as maybe some of you have, that Sophie Cares, which is a very important resource in our community for those who need nursing care and assisted living, that they've had to suddenly move to a new location. This was done rapidly and with no notice to Sophie Cares. All of the residents there have been suddenly uprooted. We're still not sure exactly where the new location is, but we will try to find out as soon as we can. Many of you will remember Wyman Rousseau and his wife, who passed away this recently or last year. We'll share more information as we have it available for you. And finally, as a joy in anticipation for the months of we wait in anticipation for the months of September and October, when we see most of our snowbirds return to San Miguel and return to Sunday services in person. They're returning from their travels hither and yon, and it will be great to see them. They're often on Zoom, so we can greet them in absentia, and we'll see them soon. Our concerns about ourselves and about humanity in the globe don't just stay within our own community. As we've done for, sadly, 3.5 years, we light our blue and yellow candle for the people of Ukraine, for all those injured, killed, or displaced on both sides of by the violence. And we truly, truly hope for a resolution, at least a ceasefire, before the year is out. We light our red candle for those suffering and killed in Gaza, This endless conflict has resulted in tens of thousands of deaths, so many of them children, and the desperation of the Gazan people has just this past week passed the threshold to be labeled a genocide. We light our final candle for all those joys, sorrows, and concerns that have not been shared, but that we hold in our hearts unspoken. During the musical meditation, you're welcome to come forward to light a candle of joy, concern, or sorrow as we hear from a new face, Taizan Alford.
I know in the program it says I'm going to do the Makahanya Hanamitashingo, but I'm going to do a song I wrote instead called I Return to the Earth.
I forgot to say, of course, you come forward.
Running in the tall grass in the heat of the summer, I feel the heat pressing on all sides. I lie down and look up at the jungle above me. Grasshoppers jumping all around. I return to the earth. She returns to me. I return to the earth. She returns me to me. Walking in the woods on a crisp fall morning. Brown and yellow leaves crunching underfoot. I breathe in and smell the damp earth beneath me, bringing me the promise of a brighter day. I return to the earth. She returns to me. I return to the earth. She returned me to me.
Hello, everyone. It is so great to see you all virtually. I'm so sorry I couldn't be there in person. Unfortunately, I've managed to get myself a really bad cold, possibly COVID, still recovering, so coming to you virtually. So for those of you who might not know me, my name is Rebecca Robb, and I've been a UU congregation member for about 2 years now. I'm a Canadian PhD student studying ethics and public affairs at Carleton University in Ottawa, Canada. And in 2021, I came to visit my mom who lives here, and I wound up staying because I fell in love with Mexico and with San Miguel de Allende because it's such a beautiful, beautiful place. So that's a little bit about me. And when I first arrived at the congregation, one of the things that I was really excited and pleased to see in the UU congregation is that there is a pretty heavy emphasis on equity and inclusion of everyone, all different types of people. I was really impressed by UU's broad spectrum of types of belief and the lack of dogma present in the faith and the wide group of people and beliefs who are accepted. We have everything from atheists to true believers in the congregation, and there's a lot of emphasis on accepting different types of people, whether it be in terms of race, sex, gender identity, or orientation. And that was really lovely and encouraging to see because I'm a disabled person. And for me, it was really encouraging to see those values of inclusion and equity in the Unitarian Universalist congregation and in the Unitarian Universalist faith. Because to me, these values of equity and inclusion are something that are both very Unitarian Universalist and really come to the fore when it comes to disability advocacy and disability equity. So today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the ways in which I see connections between Unitarian Universalism and disability rights and equality. So just to give you a little bit of context, for me, disability equality and disability in general are quite personal. So I am a disabled person. I'm severely dyslexic. And for me, basically what that means is I don't read and write very well at all in a conventional sense. So you might be familiar with autism, which is on a spectrum. You have people who are very slightly autistic and people who are very autistic. And dyslexia is like that too. So someone with mild dyslexia might just have a little bit of trouble mixing up their B's and D's or M's and W's. But for me, I'm as dyslexic as you can possibly get. So for me, what dyslexia means is that I don't read and write visually at all very well. And I didn't really learn to read at all until I was about 19. And even then, we're kind of operating at a C-spot run level. So, if a book wants to tell me in one page and 2 sentences anything about a dog named Spot or a blue ball that bounces, then I'm probably golden. But if we're trying to understand a little bit more complex ideas or look at like a chunk of text, then I simply can't do it. I cannot read that kind of text. And also, because for me, my form of dyslexia, and it's accompanied by some other similar learning disabilities, that means it's also quite difficult for me to write. So basically, I don't read and write in a conventional way. So for most of my life, since I was about 8, I've instead relied on technology to do those things. So in some ways, I'm really very lucky to be alive when I am, because there's wonderful technologies available that allow academe and reading and writing to be accessible to me. So what I use is computer software, speech-to-text and text-to-speech software. So I have a computer, like this one right here, and what it will do is it will read written text out loud to me in a mechanical voice. So I can have a computer, I can read pretty much any text aloud to me. So that's how I've gotten through high school and university and my master's, and how I do my doctoral work is when I'm researching a topic or reading an academic book or article, I've got a mechanical voice that speaks the words. And because I've been doing it for a long time, I can really crank up the speed and it will speak really rapidly. So I probably read at about the same rate as a typical person, and it is pretty efficient. Unfortunately, the exact same thing can't really be said for my writing ability, which is also excellent, if I do say so myself, but a little more flawed and complicated. So I use speech to text, which means I dictate words and then they appear on a computer screen. So the computer or phone or tablet records my words and then it will write them down for me. And this is wonderful. It's great. I've been using it for a really long time. The technology has come a long way, especially in recent years, but unfortunately, it's still not perfect. So you do still sometimes get errors. So for example, a couple of years ago, I was coming home from a party and I accidentally texted my friends when I got home, not home all good as I had thought and hoped, but home all dead. So that message gave my friends a little bit of a startle. And that kind of technical glitch and error is fairly common. So I still, when I'm doing academic work, like especially something complicated like a thesis or dissertation work, I will have someone who is not dyslexic go over my written work to avoid making mistakes or generally causing problems. But overall, really quite lucky to be able to use the technology that I can use and to be in a time when academic work has become more accessible to people like me who are blind or dyslexic or have a range of impairments that needs the accessibility of these kind of technologies. So they're wonderful. So luckily, I've actually had a fairly smooth university master's and PhD experience, and I don't know, maybe it's partly because it's my discipline is philosophy. It's quite an open-minded part of the academic world, and I've been lucky, and it hasn't been really much of a complication being dyslexic at all. But this actually wasn't the case at all when I was growing up, and I was actually subject to a fair amount of discrimination on the basis of disability. And this experience of discrimination at a young age is really what made me care pretty deeply about the values of equality and inclusion that are so dear to the disability rights movement and to Unitarian Universalists. So for me, when I was quite little, so talking junior school age, 5, 6, 7, 8, I just wasn't learning to read. And this continued to happen for quite a long time. And when I was quite young, I went to a few different schools because my family were concerned that I wasn't learning to read, but they didn't really yet know why I wasn't learning to read. And eventually I came to a school called St. Margaret's in Victoria, BC on Vancouver Island. And it's sort of an old-fashioned British-style private school, kilts, bright red blazers. I absolutely loved it there. But the school actually didn't love me back very much. And as soon as they found out that I was dyslexic, I actually was subject to quite a lot of discrimination that culminated in my getting expelled from the school for being dyslexic, just for being who I am. And then my family and I actually took the school to the BC Human Rights Tribunal. It was a 2 or 3 year long legal battle, which eventually we did win. But the experience was quite intense, quite challenging, and some was quite wonderful, because then, again, we did get this sense of the deep importance of equality and inclusion, because just as my school was rejecting me for being a disabled person, I could also see that my greater community wasn't willing to accept that, and that there was a disability rights and disability advocacy community based on the presupposition that everyone's equal, and that having a characteristic one can't help, such as a disability, isn't a reason for discrimination. So I was very fortunate in the way to see both those factors coming together at the same time. And that's why I'm so, I think, touched by the Unitarian Universalist values of equity and inclusion, and why I see this parallel between the values of the disability rights movement and the values of Unitarian Universalism. So when I was at this school, St. Margaret's, there were a number of experiences that were, I would say, somewhat challenging. So, for example, I had the experience of all the, well, not all, but many of the parents in my class really kind of turning against me, really fairly aggressively not wanting a dyslexic, a disabled student in their children's classroom. And there was actually a petition organized by the parents of my classmates calling me the one severely challenged child, disabling all the rest. And many of my friends' parents signed this petition, put their names on it, and called for me to be expelled from my school. And bear in mind, I was just a little kid. I was, 8, and the funny thing is, I wasn't a disruptive kid, and I was getting straight A's. So the concern about me really came from a place of fear and aversion, which is something that is a common reaction to disabled people by non-disabled people who aren't super familiar with disabled people. There can be an instinctive shock at the level of difference between a disabled person and non-disabled people. And there can be kind of shock and revulsion and a pushing away of the disabled person. Now, though this is completely overcomable, the best solution is simply to get to know disabled people. But it can be really difficult to do that quickly, and a lot of harm can be caused while that's happening. But one good thing is that even at this time at St. Margaret's, when people were signing a petition to have me thrown out of school, which ultimately did unfortunately happen, not everyone was doing that. There was one father who was the owner of a local restaurant, just a nice, ordinary dad. He went ahead and he signed the petition when someone asked him to, and then he got, halfway to his car in the parking lot, and he realized, hey, wait a sec, I don't think I really want to sign this, and he came rushing back, and he asked his name to be struck off. So there were people who did things like this, and as the level of discrimination kind of ramped up at the school, I did get people who did demonstrate these values of equity and inclusion and pushed back against the school. So, for example, the school asserted that because I was dyslexic, I wouldn't be permitted to learn an extra language. And we were all learning Japanese at my school, and I was quite excited to do that. I went to my first Japanese class, all excited, and then I was asked to leave in front of the whole class, and I had to sit out in the lobby and was not permitted to join the class. And my Japanese teacher actually was having none of it, and so she demanded that I be allowed into the class. So even when there is discrimination going on, we can sometimes see this focus on equity and inclusion, I think, rise along with it. And I don't think my Japanese teacher was Unitarian Universalist, but I think this is the kind of value that we can hang on to in our UU faith, and the kind of thing that really crosses over between the world of disability and the world of UUism, this focus on equity and inclusion. So ultimately, I did continue to get harassed by the school. Things got very difficult, and I eventually did get expelled. But my family and I wound up taking the case to the Human Rights Tribunal in Canada. Human Rights Tribunal is like a lower key court. There was a pitch legal battle that lasted for 2 years, and in the end I won. Me and my family won. I was awarded some small damages, and it was a victory, a full-fledged victory. It was, however, too late for me to go back to that school. I'd already moved on to another school, but that's something I'm really proud of, that we were actually able to win that fight. So that was a bit of an inspirational moment for me, and it was a very inspiring experience. But when I was preparing this speech, at this point I got a little worried, because as a disabled person, I'm a little bit wary of coming off as too inspirational. Because in the world of disability rights and disability advocacy, there is a phenomenon when disabled people are presented as only and entirely inspirational that we in the disability rights community sometimes call inspiration porn or inspiration pornography. So you might be familiar with this. So inspiration porn is when you essentially take a disabled person and you just focus on their disability, and insofar as it inspires you to live a better life, blessedly free from disability. So you might, for example, have seen at some point a poster of a little kid with, say, who's an amputee and uses a prosthetic limb, quite often a leg, and they might be holding a non-disabled adult's hand and walking on a sunset that's a little overlit, and then, above them we might see the words, "The only disability in life is a bad attitude." That would be an example of inspiration porn. Or sometimes you might have, especially for many of us who may have had in high school, a speaker come and discuss their disability purely in terms of how inspiring they are for carrying on and doing normal everyday activities whilst being disabled. So the thesis of an inspiration porn speech might be a disabled person shocks world by wheeling to work and then to cafe. What an inspiration. And the real difficulty with inspiration porn and with treating disabled people as inspiring just for being themselves, just for being disabled and alive, is that we're not really treating the person as a person. We're treating them as an object of pity. And the core thesis of inspiration porn is really, thank God I'm not you. So the difficulty emerges then. How do we ensure in our responses, both as disabled people or as non-disabled people, to disability struggles or impressive disabled people, or disability history or the accomplishments of disabled people like Paralympians who do remarkable things? How do we tell genuine inspiration apart from inspiration porn? Now, I suggest that the key difference is to apply our UU values of equity and inclusion. And Unitarian Universalists and disabled people both share a rallying cry. That is, everyone matters. Everyone is important. And so if we can see that we're coming from that position, then I think it's quite easy to avoid the pitfalls of inspiration porn. And kind of to clarify this distinction, I'd like to present two ideas from the disability rights world, though they're not technically Unitarian, but they dovetail really nicely with Unitarian Universalist values. And I think they help to illustrate both what it means to have inclusive UU values and how we can make sure that we're keeping inspiration porn separate from inspiration. And this is the curb cut effect and universal design. And universal design is really a subcategory of the curb cut effect. Now, the curb cut effect is a phenomenon that was first noticed in America in the early 1970s in Berkeley, California, at Berkeley University. Now, at this time, there's a lot of radical activism on various fronts, and one of those fronts was disability. And some disability advocates at Berkeley took it upon themselves one day to make their university more accessible. They just took some direct action, and what they did was one day they got some cement and they poured it on the curb and they made a ramp. Just went for it, full bore, made a ramp with or without permission. And they were expecting this action to make the campus more accessible for wheelchair users, for people who use wheelchairs to then be able to zip around the campus with greater ease and to be able to just access things with greater, fluidity and not have that barrier of the curb, which if you're a wheelchair user can mean you can't get anywhere because there's a curb there. They were really surprised to find that what happened right after they installed the curb cut was that everyone used it. It wasn't just disabled people who benefited. Also who benefited were people using strollers, pushing strollers, young moms, skateboarders on their skateboards, pushing their skateboard along, zipping along on their skateboard, people carrying heavy objects. All manner of people benefited from the curb cut. And since then, since the 70s, this effect has been known as the curb cut effect. And what this is quite often when adjustments and accommodations are made for disabled people, everyone benefits. Some other well-known examples are closed captioning on television, and indeed right here, up above me. This was something that was invented for people who are deaf or hard of hearing, but which benefits many, many people. Perhaps you're watching a show in a language that isn't your first language. Perhaps the people on the show are speaking with a quick accent, or maybe you just want to enjoy a show without having to bother other people around you by having the volume up. And that's how really we got that closed captioning started, just aimed at disabled people. Now, universal design is similar to the curb cut effect in that it points out the benefits to all of accessible spaces. But universal design is an idea from architecture and the design world, which suggests that in order to create fully accessible spaces, what we should do is not focus on whether or not people are or aren't disabled, but on making spaces that will be accessible to everyone regardless of disability. So then we have things like buildings that would automatically, say, have doors that are easy to open or can be opened automatically, sinks and bathrooms at different heights so that wheelchair users and people of different heights can enjoy them, and also so can children enjoy them. And we have this idea that one can make spaces that are accessible to everybody. The core idea doesn't have to be, let's make things work for disabled people. It can be, let's make things work for everyone. Let's make things universally accessible. And this to me could not be more Unitarian Universalist, as I think our goal is to make a spiritual space that is accessible to everyone. And similarly, universal design and the curb cut effect, the goal is to make a physical space accessible to everyone. So I believe there's a real connection there. Now, it is true that accessibility and creating accessible spaces isn't always easy. Sometimes it's difficult. Creating accessible spaces costs money and takes time. So there are some difficulties and some challenges there. But I think if we take to heart the idea that it is possible to make a space accessible in a way that will benefit everyone, this is very positive. And also, if we focus on the reality that true accessibility focuses on people as people and what they really need, then we can have a clear distinction between finding someone inspirational and inspiration porn. And in our own congregation, I think there are ways that we do very well in terms of accessibility. I'm always quite moved when each week I hear someone say, please rise in body or spirit. I think that's very accessible language, not including everyone, people who can and cannot stand. And also people who, you might be tired. You don't feel like standing right now. Maybe you just really want to get to those cookies and your blood sugar's crashing and standing up seems a little too much. And hey, you're included. We're all included there. I think that's lovely. On the other hand, I think we could maybe do a little bit better when it comes to making it clear that there is an elevator. It's around the corner, and that might be helpful to make a little more obvious, as I think people struggle sometimes up the stairs when that might not be necessary. And also, I think sometimes the most difficult thing may be when someone comes to a service who cannot be quiet and sit down for an hour and a half. And that's challenging, I think, to us as a congregation. But if we want to be a little more genuinely inclusive, there might be ways to make our services a little more accessible to people who maybe can't sit down the whole time. And so with that, I'd like to wrap up and say thank you so very much for having me and allowing me to speak. I hope you can see the connections between Unitarian Universalist values and the disability rights values of equity and inclusion. And thank you for listening to a little bit of my personal experience.
We apologize for the sound issues due to the humidity and the video itself. Now, for time and generosity, Buddhist Thich Nhat Hanh reminds us of the deep joy and abundance that come from generosity. He writes, "Give generously so as to discover abundance." To explain, he shares a story from his home in Vietnam about a small vegetable called hay. It looks like a scallion and is delicious in soup. The more you cut the plants in the base, the more it grows. Left untouched, it hardly grows at all. But when you cut again and again, it returns each time stronger, larger, and more abundant. Thich Nhat Hanh tells us that generosity works in the very same way. The more we give, the more we discover that our own hearts expand. Each act of giving, whether time, care, kindness, or love, makes us richer in happiness and well-being. What may seem like letting go actually creates more, always in return. The offering will now be taken and very gratefully received.
De ti yo recibo, a ti te doy, así compartimos y vivimos hoy. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. De ti yo recibo, a ti te doy, así compartimos y vivimos hoy. From you I receive, to you I give, together we.
Let's join our voices together for our final song, Draw the Circle Wide. I invite you to remain seated so everybody can see the video. Please follow the words in your order of service.
Thank you all so much for joining us today for our service, even with all the humidity and the water on our equipment. So sorry. These are our closing words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we're together again. Just the chalice. Okay. And would you remain seated for the postlude?